Well, we all know immigration is well and truly out of control in Australia. Get a load of this. 1 in 36 people in Australia today arrived last year. We took in 737,000 migrants in 2023, the largest migration in our history. Astronomical numbers nobody asked for. But spare a thought for America, where they've seen more than 6 million illegal immigrants cross their southern border in just 3 years. Last week, Texas took matters into their own hands, barricading their border with barbed wire and blocking the feds' access to Eagle Pass, since all the feds were doing was letting them through. This week, the Supreme Court ruled that the Biden administration could cut down said wire, proving yet again that not only the White House, but also the Supreme Court has decided to destroy America by allowing it to be invaded, effectively leaving the population to defend itself. Well, that's exactly what Texas Governor Greg Abbott intends to do. Check out his letter following the Supreme Court's ruling. He spares no firepower, writing, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and the other visionaries who wrote the US Constitution foresaw that states should not be left to the mercy of a lawless president who does nothing to stop external threats like cartels smuggling millions of illegal immigrants across the border. He goes on to write, I have already declared an invasion under the relevant article and clause of said Constitution to invoke Texas's constitutional authority to defend and protect itself. That authority is the supreme law of the land and supersedes any federal statutes to the contrary. Joining me now to discuss is US filmmaker Ami Horowitz. Ami, thanks so much for joining us. It's our national day here, Australia Day. So everyone else is on the cans at the moment.
Yay, Australia Day. Good for you guys.
That's the spirit.
Back here, that was enough of me talking about Australia. Let's talk about America.
Here, here. So tell me, if Governor Greg Abbott holds the line here, Ami, he could become one of the most significant governors in American history, couldn't he?
His letter was a masterclass in constitutional interpretation, right? It really broke down the issues in a very interesting way. Now, again, I think a lot of people listening to this might say, wait a second. They're cutting down razor. Why the hell wasn't the razor wire up in the first place? Why wouldn't there be razor wire when you have millions of people coming through your border? It's an obvious question. It's a good question. And like we said, the better question might be, why is the president insisting on cutting it down, right? The immigration issue has recently become the #1 issue in America, surpassing even inflation issues, because everyone is seeing, including people in the blue cities, that this is affecting the entire country and it cannot stand. Yet, the president, who stands at a 70% disapproval rate on the most important issue in America, continues to push down the line of open borders. It doesn't make any sense. But what we are seeing now is a bit of a constitutional crisis in our country. Now, the Supreme Court did say that the federal government can tear down the razor wire. What it did not say was that Texas couldn't put up more razor wire. So you have this absurd situation where you have federal border officials tearing it down, and right behind them are Texas officials putting it right back up, literally what we're seeing. And if you listen to CNN and MSNBC and the BBC and everything else, they'll say that Texas is acting illegally in putting up this razor wire. That is absolutely not true. That is not what the Supreme Court said. But what it is doing is setting up a bit of a constitutional crisis. Because on the one hand, the Constitution does say that the federal government is in charge of the U.S. borders. On the other hand, it does say that the states can take action to stop invasion. And part of the legal argument Abbott is making is kind of a novel way of saying, look, this is an invasion. We consider this to be an invasion, and therefore we have the right to protect our sovereign state borders and take these steps. It's fascinating. And frankly, Liz, it's a little bit scary. I got to be honest.
Yeah, I don't doubt it for anyone there on the ground, but I would think that the vast majority of Americans would be championing Governor Greg Abbott's take on this. Go for it, buddy. The buck stops with Texas. If they manage to hold the line on this, it is going to set a really important precedent for the rest of the nation. Naturally, this is, as you've said, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, deciding factor this election year. Let's take a look at what Trump said this week he'll be doing about how many people are coming to the country and what kind of people are allowed in.
I will immediately restore and expand the Trump travel ban on entry from terror-plagued countries, and I will implement strong ideological screening for all immigrants. If you hate America, if you want to abolish Israel, if you sympathize with jihadists, then we don't want you in our country. We don't want you.
Is it any wonder he's won both primaries so far, Ami? This issue alone could get him the gong, couldn't it?
I don't look. The left and the legacy media will do whatever they can to paint what he just said is racist. And that is patently insane. Nothing he said that was racist. Every single thing he said made complete and utter sense. And yes, you're always looking for these 60-40 issues, right? That's how you win and lose elections. You want to push on the 60% versus 40% issues where you can get the country. This is even more. This is 70-30. This may be 80-20. This is basics, ABC on how you have to protect and continue to have a sovereign nation. Why would you want to allow people in who hate your country? There's a lot of people out there who hate America. I don't want a single one of those people in my country. I'm glad he said it, but I promise you that will be painted by the legacy media and the left as Trump is a racist, Trump is xenophobic. That's what you're going to see.
That's what they do with common sense. Sadly, it's no different here, Ami. Now, a poll from the Public Religion Research Institute this week shows that over 25% of Americans born between 1997 and 2012 now identify as LGBTIQ, which is, of course, significantly higher than previous generations. Ami, would you say that this proves that there is some sort of social contagion going on? What else could explain such a phenomena? This is obviously the first generation that spent their childhood and or teenage years on social media, which is awash with LGBTIQ type stuff, sitting in classes where diversity is held up as the only virtue, and also living in a society that idolizes victimhood. Was this always going to happen?
Well, I think you said it all yourself. I think you don't need me as a guest. I think you set it up and said it perfectly. That's exactly what it is. It's total social contagion. How else can you explain where from the millennial generation to Gen Z, it has got up almost 100% an affiliation as queer, which, by the way, is a term I cannot fully understand. By the way, to this day, nobody can explain to me how queer is different from being gay. But nonetheless, that's how they're self-identifying. There's a tremendous amount of peer pressure to race to see how unhomophobic, you could be. It's so weird, and I'm not exactly sure how to explain it other than this weird peer pressure. And like you said, a social contagion. I think that really does set it up.
Normalize everything. That's what the left seem to want, no holes barred. Ami Horowitz, thank you so much for your time this evening.